Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first ever Access Creative College Esports webinar. My name is Richard Buckley. I will be your host for the evening. I'm the esports sector specialist at the college, and I have the privilege over the next 45 to about 1 hour to talk to some of the leading esports minds in the game across content creation, live broadcast, and everything that happens behind the scenes. We've got Leah Revelle all the way from Canada. We've got Brandon Smith, currently in Copenhagen, who's been covering the FIFA E majors. Martin Wyatt, who is a legend of the game and one of the senior heads at Esports Engines. And alongside him, we have got Callum Dornan, owner of SAF, who can actually say that the second best esports team in FIFA in the world. He's not stopped smiling since Saturday night. If you are joining us for the first ever time, you want to know Access Creative Colleges, !ACC in the chat. We'll tell you a little bit more about Access and the courses that are available, and also all of the social media links, Twitter, Instagram. You get the gist in the chat. It is interactive and it is an online webinar. So if you've got any conversation points or topics of discussion in the live chat, let us know, and we'll be hosting sort of a 10-15 minute panel at the end of the show where you can have your questions asked and topics discussed alongside our expert guests. But without any further introduction, you've not come to listen to me, you've come to listen to the best minds in the game. So without any further ado, let me introduce the one and only Martin Wyatt to the ACC online webinar. Martin, if everything's worked correctly, you should be live right now. Firstly, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks, mate. I mean, I've been called some things in my time, but a legend in the game is not one. That's very, very kind of you. I'll take it, though. I'll take it. I'm not entirely sure it's true, but I'll take it.
That is definitely true. It's definitely true. So for anyone who's sort of unaware of yourself, for any of the current students or prospective students who are wanting to get involved in esports, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved, and what's the journey been like up to your current position at Esports Engine?
Sure. So currently, I reside at Esports Engine, where my job is to kind of lead the international expansion through the growth of the UK and the European business. So that's working alongside true legends of the game, people like Adam Apicella, Ryan Thompson, and some of the kind of ex-MLG guys that you've probably heard of for the last sort of, depending on your age anyway, sort of last sort of 20 odd years. But my journey into esports started very much at a voluntary level. Formerly through Gfinity, where I spent 7 to 8 years, and then moved on from there sort of 2 years ago, last October. So, what we do at Esports Engine essentially is try and provide some of the infrastructure behind the scenes that sets, I suppose, the scene for some of the great sort of esports moments that take place, and that would be by providing a number of different services, from ecosystem and competition design to competition operations, production and broadcast, event management, logistics, marketing, you name it. Essentially, we're there to kind of be firmly behind the scenes, work very, very closely with sort of predominantly games publishers, to kind of get these things off the ground and have a load of fun and provide opportunities for people to play and for people to watch and enjoy them immensely, hopefully.
So since you've been involved, I would say out of all the guests that we've had, you've got the most experience. It's not having a dig at the age by any stretch.
That was very, very politely done. Thanks, Rich.
How would you say esports has sort of evolved, especially sort of in the last couple of years? I think COVID's played a massive impact, everything going remote. But since you started, sort of, what's the progression been like? And for some of the students, sort of, how would you have developed if you could look back and tell yourself, what, 10 years ago, this is where we're going to end up?
I think the main difference is how professional everything is now. And that's part of why I think we all got into it. Was, we saw the potential. We saw that there was a kind of a way of doing things creatively, innovatively, and efficiently that could really level up actually what people were able to experience. I think that there are kind of two things that are really important to me and important to the way we do things at Esports Engine. That's the people that make the games and the people that play them. And ultimately, when you're dealing with these kind of billion-dollar publishers, and you are entrusted with their their products, you've got to look at it in a number of ways. You've got to treat it with the utmost respect, make sure that you kind of represent it and them incredibly well, and mainly so that the most important thing to kind of anyone creating games is obviously the people that play them. So the end customer has to have a really, really good experience. And so professionalism was always going to be at the forefront of how things had to develop. That required funding. So there's much more money flying about the industry now than there was before. The vast majority of it good, some bad. So you kind of need to be aware of the sharks in the water a little bit. But, it's in a significantly, the industry is in a significantly better place than it's kind of ever been. There's been a little bit of consolidation along the way. I think that's natural as kind of any industry grows. But, I think that now that you've kind of got, more people playing than ever before, more people watching than ever before, different types of games are now kind of, representing themselves in a competitive sense. All signs are very, very positive. Selfishly, from a kind of a UK and Europe perspective, maybe UK more so, is that we're now starting to establish the UK as a bit more of a destination. Much more emphasis is kind of placed upon talent development here. From a business standpoint, the fact that companies like Esports Engine and Vindex are willing to invest in the UK and Europe because they see it as a major hub for not only how they want the business to operate, but also because they know there's great talent here to kind of work on the business side of our industry. But also, the market demands that something cool happens here, and we're able to do big and amazing stuff for some of our clients. And so I'd say that the key things would be how professional it is, the fact that it's much more financially stable than it's ever been before, and the potential just kind of keeps surprising everybody. It's a great industry because it's so dynamic and things change. Games come out of left field that take the industry by storm. But that it's in a really, really exciting place.
And you spoke about some of those games and Esports Engine. From what I understand, Esports Engine, it's not been the longest sort of running company, but the minds behind it, I'll throw it around again, legends of the esports scene.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Sort of, how did Esports Engine rise as quick as it did? Is it because of those minds behind it, or do you think one of the big things in esports, preparation? I always talk about it. Preparation is everything in the industry. How do you prepare if these sort of the students coming up and looking at it? How do you sort of get your foot in the door? How do you prepare and try and propel? Then there's preparation and then propelling a business or an enterprise or a commentator or a professional player into that next level.
Yeah, I think Esports Engine albeit only 3 years old, is still sort of 20, 25 years in the making. It's come, it's a lot of the people that founded the company came from MLG, who were then acquired by Activision Blizzard, then kind of moved out of there, and Esports Engine was kind of born and sort of mobilized through Vindex. And so it's your point about preparation is, there's a lot of muscle memory from years gone by. But one of the greatest things about our company is it's essentially its DNA has been built on people who just were passionate about the industry, wanted to force a way in, found themselves kind of developing into careers they probably never thought they had. And now some of them are probably the best in the world at what they do. And I think that's probably always going to be some of the kind of fuel that fires the company as it propels itself forward. Is we're always looking for young talent. We're always looking for kind of enthusiastic people who are, determined to kind of force their way into this industry. And a lot of the jobs that kind of we're recruiting for now and we're doing now on behalf of clients, they didn't necessarily exist 10 years ago. And so the point is, I think that, you can let your passion lead the way, you can let your enthusiasm lead the way. And, there is no standing on ceremony. There is no point in being reticent at asking for opportunities. You kind of got to bang on the door, bang loudly, force your way in. And when you get in, kind of make a statement through hard work, enthusiasm, and doing things with a smile on your face, because it's a creative industry, it's a dynamic industry, it's video games, they're meant to be fun. So if we're all working for and no disrespect to anyone who works in insurance companies, but if we're all working in insurance, then you could, in a cubicle, you could be forgiven for being a bit sort of grumpy. But it's incredibly hard work what we do. It's relentless, it's non-stop, it's very client focused, and so the requirement to be professional is always at the forefront of what we do. And there's a lot of pressure, but it's video games, and so what's not to enjoy?
Well, you got a client meeting in 20 minutes time? I know we don't have you for long. If anyone's got any questions for Martin before he has to shoot off, let us know those in the chat. Before we do get some questions, and before I let you go, I know you're a very busy man. Where do you see the future potentially leading us for esports? What do you think's on the horizon? We've got the Commonwealth Games, which I think could be a big step forward. Esports involved, I think, breaching it to that more casual and that older audience, that more mature audience, that this is what we are doing. This is what the youth are all about. But what for you do you see the next 5-10 years of esports leading to?
It's really tough to predict, just because you never know what's going to happen at a video game level, which, without them, none of this kind of happens. But where I see it, as I see kind of from our perspective and businesses that operate in our space, probably a little bit more sort of consolidation. I see, the demand for esports content to continue to spill into sort of more mainstream sort of platforms, like your more traditional terrestrial TV, Skies, your BTs, BBCs, places like that, once they can find the right way to utilize it. Things like the Commonwealth Games, the Olympics and stuff, I think that they need us more than we need them. And I think that will become, there'll be a realization around sort of the power dynamic in that at some point soon. Exciting nonetheless. I think, look, I'm an eternal optimist. I'm an opportunist. I think that any opportunity that the industry has to kind of grow in terms of an awareness or a reach perspective, it should take that. It should grasp that with both hands, provided it stays credible and it stays respectful to the kind of games it's representing and the communities that love those games so much.
We just got a quick question in the chat before I let you go. Two questions actually. Firstly, Max asking, as a 16-year-old, what's the way in to the esports scene? How it's very hard to get work experience. Do you sort of have any tips? I think for me, whenever I hear about people wanting to get into the industry, I think having that social media presence is impactful. Getting in people's faces and making sure that they know who you are. What about from yourself?
I mean, I tend to agree with you. I think that, it's about staying as close to how the industry is developing as possible, so that your knowledge is kind of up to scratch, and then just putting yourself out there. You can't beat a good old bit of networking, provided that there's time. And I do it regularly. People kind of reach out via various platforms, and if I can find the time to kind of have a little bit of a chat and provide some advice, I'll always do that. So, feel free to kind of stalk me and use me as a resource. And if I've got the time, I'll try and help out. But knock on the doors, stay closely, try and work out which area that you want to specialize in. If you want to be a content creator, start creating content and don't stop. If you want to kind of explore a bit more of the business element, try and work out what part of the business it is that excites you. Because there are more people joining this industry from more sort of traditional business backgrounds that don't necessarily have sort of esports and gaming as a passion point, but they're still able to add value. But so just kind of maybe try and think a little bit more clearly about the direction you want to go in, and then just double down on it, make some noise, network, and meet people.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one more quick question before you get off, Martin. Backpage Gaming asking, do you think the next 5 years we'll see esports enter into the mainstream media? I know it doesn't particularly need it, but I think for the average Joe sitting at home, it would mean a monumental amount.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it will because and it will for a couple of reasons. I think that the forecasted growth will probably demand that it gets more attention. And the average age of people making those sort of decisions about what kind of things to cover, what kind of content to put on those platforms is getting younger. And so whereas and again, not trying to give away my age too much, which isn't quite as old as 100 years, but not a million miles away. I started playing games on things like the Commodore 64, which you won't have even heard of. And so people who are in, I think, decision-making positions grew up playing games, grew up loving games, and will be much more sort of open to kind of incorporating them into sort of strategically how they want their platforms to develop. So all signs are really, really positive, I think.
Martin, absolute hero. Thank you very much from everybody at Access. I know you've got a very busy diary.
No worries.
Absolute legend. Thank you very much, mate, and I'll speak to you very soon.
All right, mate. Nice one. Thank you.
The one and only Martin Wyatt right there. The train keeps rolling and the guests keep on coming. Without any further ado, I feel as though I've got 3 people right here in front of me looking at me, all thinking, is it going to be me? But there's one man in particular, sorry, Leah, we'll come to you very soon, that we just have to get on. And it's the one and only Mr. Callum Dornan, owner of SAF. Cal, it's a great time to chat to you because you had your best ever moment in esports just this last weekend.
Beautiful, mate. Yeah. This is the perfect timing. So we came second in the world in E Club and then top 16 in FIFA as well. So I think as a UK team, we had the top result in 1v1 and, of course, the top result in 2v2 with the whole of the UK. So, yeah, hell of an achievement, mate.
So for anyone who was wondering about that, that's FIFA Esports.
Yeah.
Let's rewind the clock. Let's go back a few years. Esports for you, how did you get involved? Did you come from potentially sort of a traditional? Was it a content creation, or have you always been involved in gaming?
I'll tell you the story about it. It was a mistake, if I'm honest with you. So when I first started, we started with a Facebook group, and we decided to try and monetize that through a premium membership. Now, at the time, I was working full-time as a financial advisor, and I was already paying higher rate tax. So I decided rather than take it as an income for myself, that we would invest it into FIFA Esports. And so that's how it started. We signed our first ever player was that first year. I think his name was Tonesy, and he wasn't great. To be honest. It didn't work out very well. And then 6 months later, into signing him, a Swedish team came in for him and said, we'd like to sign him for their league. And we said, well, you're going to have to pay for him. He's contracted to us. And they gave us £500 for him. So, and that was our first year in esports.
And since then, you've amounted to huge heights. $50,000 just won at the weekend.
I've literally got the card right next to it. I'm not saying that it's not left for sight or anything, but
it's got the check on hand. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people seeing the brand, seeing the SAF team. How hard has it been to get to those heights? Because everyone always sees the peaks, everyone always sees the winning moments. What's it been like as a team owner? You're the man who you've got to sign off on those checks. You've got to be the person who brings players on, takes players away. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people in the chat saying that they want to be a professional player. They want to be a professional coach. And there'll be questions about that of what you look for in one of those players. But talk to me about some of the lows of being in esports as a team owner.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's same with any business. There's ups and downs. We've had things that we think, leaks from moderators that you think, oh my God, if this goes viral, we're in trouble here. It might make us look bad. And, right down to players not wanting to play for us anymore. We've had content creators that we really want to keep that have left. And, when these things happen, you try and do your best, but there's only so much you can do. And it's, what you've got to remember is with any of the highs, there's always lows, but it's just, riding them and trying to get back to the highs as quickly as possible. So, there's always struggles with, I think, any sort of business, but I think in esports in particular, because it can be so volatile, you can be the best team in the world the next, one day, but you've always got to be continuously trying to work to try and develop yourself. So, and the same applies to content as well. The idea of someone falling off, so to put it, I think that's sort of the popular term at the moment. They fell off. I think that's every content creator's nightmare, is being sort of labelled as that. So
and every content creator has fallen off at some point or another. And
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's trying, finding ways to engage with the audience, reinvigorating what you're doing, and trying to connect with sort of the grassroots of like the communities and stuff. Because at the end of the day, it's the followers that are, that are backing the org, and it's making sure that we're still in touch with them and relating to them as best we can.
So obviously involved in FIFA esports, there might be potential ventures in the future on different esports games and different esports titles. As an owner, when you're scouting, because I would say SAF probably one of the best in terms of scouting players and bringing players in at a younger age, 16, 17, and then developing that talent. What do you look for in a professional player across any esport? Because I'm sure the mechanical skill will translate across, but is there some of those special factors? Is it a social media presence? Is it the personality of a player? What do you look for in recruiting the next esports star?
Yeah, so I think this has probably changed a little bit since we first started. So when we first started, we were purely results driven. We wanted to sign the players that we thought would do the best. But actually, as we've grown as an organization, it's become quite clear that our sponsors and our brands, what they're really after is a return on their investment in the form of exposure and being put in front of different people. So now when we're looking at players, we sort of, yes, we rate them on how good they are and what we think is the potential ability to develop as a player and grow, but also on what their social media game is like. So are they active on Twitch? Do they have a TikTok profile? Are they doing anything on Instagram? What sort of reach are they getting? The tone, is it professional? If I see a player that is a great player, but every other word is either moaning about the game they're playing or it's, inappropriate stuff that they're liking, things like that, we won't look at that player, basically. They've got to have the full package.
And you mentioned sponsors in there. I just saw a question in the chat from Ernest Esports saying, can you talk about how to get sponsors? He said for tournaments, but for your team, what's the process like? Because we just see the logo on the shirt or on the sleeve. How long of a process is that as an owner?
I mean, it can vary. So I'll give you a great example. We did a deal quite recently with Defy Gaming. They're one of our primary partners. We sent them our media deck, which is sort of and if you don't know what a media deck is, it's got all of the statistics of the org and bits and pieces. And they ignored it for 2 weeks. And then I guess someone must have opened it and gone, actually, that's pretty good. We'd like to chat with them. But then once we were in, that was done within a week. So it was a very fast acting deal. But we've had partners in the past where it's taken 6 months to build a relationship with them to the point where they trust us in either an activation or some kind of sponsorship. So it really does vary. But in terms of trying to find them, we sort of related to it with the last call that you're on. Networking is so incredibly important. A lot of the time, it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know and who you can speak to about it. So whether that's an agency or a partnership manager or a business development manager that you can get in touch with and say, look, we've got an opportunity here. We can provide this amount of impressions and this amount of reach, and we can do a TikTok post, we do a Twitter post, we can get you on Twitch, Twitch streams, you'll be on banners, that sort of thing. In return, we're looking for funding of this kind of sponsorship, this sort of partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you and Martin both alluding to, social media, content creation is so important. Yourself, do you think because you are a content creator in your own right. I know you might not like that term. For yourself, team owner first, content creator second, but what, 200,000 plus followers across social media?
Yeah, well, 280, I think, at the moment on my own personal ones. But it's not, yeah.
280,000 followers. Do you think that because you're doing content, because you're creating, because you're streaming, that the players look at you and go, well, if he's got time to do it and he's got time to get 3 sponsors on the shirt, he's got time to set up all these deals, why can't we do it as well?
It's a good question. I mean, the reality is actually my content is probably taking a back seat. I think if we're being realistic about it, I streamed last night on Twitch for the first time in nearly a month. Obviously, I was in Copenhagen for 2 or 3 weeks, which was lovely. But, I'm not as full-time content as I used to be. I still manage our Twitter, but, things like we have an Instagram feed, we have Facebook feed, we've got Twitter accounts that aren't in my name, that just the orgs. We have people that actually manage them on our behalf. So, there isn't enough hours in the day. I put 60 to 70 hours a week into this. I could quite easily do 100 if there was enough hours in the day, but it's about hard work. It's about managing your time appropriately. People, I think when we first started out, I'd sit in a PlayStation party with my mates and we'd just have a bit of banter and stuff, but the reality is nothing gets done. You need to get out there. You need to be proactive and you need to manage your time as efficiently as possible to get things done.
Well, I've seen a few questions in the chat talking about yourself and sort of asking Saf. Lewis just saying, is there any potential work experience opportunities? Is that something that comes up, whether it be at SAF or other UK, European esports organisations and companies?
Yeah, I mean, we have had, we did take on a work experience, a young man earlier in the year. It was an interesting experience, Marco. I've never done it myself, where I've offered work experience. And he came and sat with me in our office at Snetterton at the time. It is something that, I think as a way of getting in the front door of an esports team, I think for, in particular, teams that don't necessarily have massive funding, I think it's a great way of getting the experience. And then you can put that onto your CV and then you can go to some of these bigger teams and say, this is the experience I've got, Can we go from there? And I can give you a great example where actually one of our content, I can't tell you who it is yet because it hasn't actually officially happened, but one of our
inside scoop, please.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit here. But one of our content creators is, he's been with us for a little while now. He's built up some great experience, but he's just taken a job at Excel to start in September. So he'll be leaving us, which is a real shame. But he's got the job partly because of how good he is at things. He's exceptional, but he's got it because of the experience he's got working within social media and, that side of things. And it's not necessarily the game that he plays at the moment, but it's within the gaming sphere. So, getting that experience is so crucial.
Final question. A couple of questions, actually. People asking about sort of the opportunities. If I was a 16, 15, 17-year-old wanting to get some work experience, do you think there's a right way to go about it and a wrong way? Do you think sort of being aggressive on social media not the way to do it? Maybe a business email or just going about it. I think Martin said it the professional way instead of going on social media.
I get 20 DMs in my Twitter every single day, minimum in the message request things at the top. I don't read half of them, and I get people in there coming to me say all the time saying, how do I join SAF? How do I get involved? The reality is if you want to do it the proper way, email, probably the best. But, our website, for example, has got an application process. And it's not just saying in a one-liner, I really want to join your team and I'll do it for free. Because, I'll give you an example. We were looking for a social media manager for our Twitter 9 months ago, and we had 500 applications. So it's about standing out, having a USP, giving details about yourself, why you think you'd be right for the job, some ideas that you might have where it might improve things on our end, where we sit up and go, okay, well, this kid's actually got something about him. Let's explore a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think I saw just somebody saying they were emailing esports orgs, Excel, Fnatic. It's similar to a football sense. You're not going to go from being non-league to signing for Man United and Man City. Sometimes you need to work your way up, and that's no disrespect to a lot of the esports orgs. I mean, you are one of the biggest in the UK now with staff. You're in that category, but you have to work your way up through the ladder almost. Do you think that's accurate in saying, or do you think you can?
100%. I mean, let's be honest, Excel and Fnatic, they have the budget to go and get a top professional to do any role that they want. They've got that budget. So, they're not going to be looking for someone with no experience who's never worked in the esports scene before. They're going to be looking for the top class professional that's done it for a couple of years and has a proven track record of what they can do. So really, you need to refocus your efforts on finding potentially an org that might not even pay you anything, to be honest with you, as a volunteer, and just getting some experience there, getting some evidence that you kind of know what you're talking about, and there's a bit of a track record, and a good reference as well goes a long way. And then going for the next step up. It's it's like it's your first step in your career, really. The old saying is you have to start to be the tea boy to the coffee boy or something, don't you, Rich? It's So I got very lucky in the way we've done things. It's taken a lot of work, but when we first started, we were making absolutely no money, and our first pay was on £50 a month. So we've come a long way.
Yeah, absolutely, Cal. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. I know you're a very busy man. You've got calls all day blowing up your phone.
Love it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll see you potentially in the future doing further talks with Access Creative College. Everyone has been really, really pleasant in the chat and asking loads of very useful questions. I'm sure they've taken a lot
having us, Rich. Yeah,
out of this chat.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much, mate. I'll see you soon.
Take care, mate. Bye for now.
Callum Dornan right there. Great insight from Saf. So we've stepped from behind the curtain. We're going to step in front of it right now. The next two guests, I might bring them on at the same time, to be honest, because they do quite similar roles in terms of content creation, in terms of on-air camera work. So without any further ado, let's bring into the equation. Firstly, all the way from Canada, Leah Revelle, and also coming from Copenhagen, Mr. Brandon Smith. Guys, firstly, how are we both doing, Leah? First.
Good. Very well. Very hot here as well. But doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon, you're over in Copenhagen at the minute. If you don't know who these two are, Brandon Smith, over, is it 500,000 followers across all social media? I know you'll correct me if that's incorrect.
We're close.
Up to 500,000 followers, been involved in esports for the last 5 years as a commentator, presenter, host, you name it. You've done it. Firstly, Brandon, what you've heard from Martin and Cal, great insight into the industry, but now we're going to step in front of the camera. We're going to step into the content creation land. But how much I was learning things just listening to those two there. It's always insightful information.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you have to excuse me. I've sort of tried to make this hotel room into a makeshift studio. I'm not sweating either. This is just one light I've got on my face. But no, I'd agree with you. I think lots to take from it, Rich, in terms of a work experience capacity. I like your analogy. You're absolutely right. You don't just walk into Fnatic and you don't just walk into Excel. You've got to start off, by volunteering your time and probably starting at the bottom and taking whatever opportunities you can, and then sort of working up and sort of getting your first big break.
Leah, I want to come to you. You're professional content creator with numerous different clubs and esports organizations, actually. How long you've been sort of late into the scene in terms of creation and content creation, and sort of now moving into on-air camera work? What's your sort of career and story been like within the esports and gaming stratosphere?
Yeah, so I've been a gamer for as long as I can remember. Not necessarily sports games. That is a relatively new realm. But like right back to like Super Nintendos and N64s, Banjo-Tooie, Super Mario, all of those. But COVID is actually kind of what started this whole journey for me. I actually played NHL before I played FIFA. And FIFA, I started playing in 2017. And yeah, it was kind of, just casual, nothing competitive, offline, with friends and family. And it was, like I was saying, COVID that kind of kickstarted a little bit of like a spark, I guess. My partner actually had streamed leisurely pre-COVID and had always said, it's an industry where there's not a huge female presence. You should do it. You already play. Like, buy a PC and stream. And so I kind of put it off actually for a couple of years. And because we lacked a lot of social interaction during that first year of COVID, I think it was a perfect time. I finally said, listen, I'm not doing anything else. I might as well just turn on a webcam and talk to a chat. And yeah, it'll be 2 years at the end of October. So crazy journey. But as you mentioned, now I'm kind of still obviously maintaining that content creation as a priority, I would say, but getting into broadcasting and hosting and stuff as well has been a lot of fun. It's been a nice expansion on my brand. So,
well, it's interesting you say broadcasting, because that's what Brandon, you would say first and foremost broadcaster and then content creator second. Where did it start for you in broadcasting and in esports?
Yeah, I mean, it started, technically I've been commentating FIFA now for 5 years. Obviously with yourself many moons ago, we sort of got into it at university. And again, you talk about starting out from nothing. The best advice I'd give anyone that wants to get into esports casting is that, a lot of people go to, I've taught an esports degree before. There's esports courses such as Access are doing now here at a BTEC level, and in further education moving forward. A lot of people want to be on-air personalities and want to be talent. And the thing you've got to understand for that is you don't just walk into the big jobs. But the best advice I've got is choose a game you love, choose a game you want to try and get into, and then look at what's going on in that ecosystem. For example, there'll be tournaments where they could be happening in dorm rooms at universities or colleges, right? That probably want a commentator or a voice, or alternatively tournaments that are taking place online with £100 prize pots. And that's what I started out doing. I started basically just volunteering my time, commentating these tournaments from literally a setup like this in my university room. Bro, I think I got paid about £4 an hour in total. That's how much I broke it down to over 14 weeks of commentating this online FIFA league, just because I wanted to get my name out there and make a bit of noise, as Martin said earlier today, and just get as many reps out there, get talking to people, get commentating, get seen. And at that stage of your career, forget about the money. You're in education still. It's about just getting the reps in, commentating over tournaments, because a lot of people out there, believe it or not, in esports that would love you to work for free constantly. Yep. At whatever level. They can get a commentator that can speak, no matter if you're good or bad. If you can just talk and fill some airtime for a period of time, they're going to take you on board for free at the end of the day. So, that's what sort of kicked me off. Next thing you know, FIFA was the game for me. Became luckily established in the game from doing more and more work. Then you suddenly start getting higher paid stuff, and then you might start covering, your big tournaments like the majors, the FIFA E World Cups, alternatively Rocket League or League of Legends. As Richard can see there, he's got many scarves to the collection that we've had in our journey together. And now we're here. Denmark, we haven't had a Worlds for 2 years because of COVID, but we've had 3 Worlds back to back: the FIFA E World Cup, the FIFA E Club World Cup, and this week we've got the FIFA E Nations Cup, which is a $400,000 FIFA tournament. So we're talking big tournaments here, 4-day broadcast, and it's been a long journey, but still one that's moving.
And it's interesting you talked about doing stuff for cheap and doing stuff potentially at the start. But whatever you do, you have to be professional about it. I've seen a couple of tournaments in previous times where people are doing it because they think they're doing it for cheaper. They think they can just mess about on it or not do it to a professional level. But you never know who is watching. You never know who's potentially going to see that. And even for your own brand, you can clip it up. You can make it a CV. We always say that on-air experience is your CV. For you, Leah, you sort of got the experience in streaming and then only recently went into the on-air broadcasting. How was it for you? Sort of your first event, you were quite sort of, you didn't go around, you didn't work up, you went straight in at a real top level at the Team of the Season Cup, a £500,000 tournament. How was it for you, and what were the nerves like? How did you prepare for it, and what was the overall experience?
It was very nerve-wracking, I can't lie. Luckily, my primary platform is Twitch. And so essentially what I do on a regular basis is fire up a stream and talk to my chat. So I'm good at talking. And that's kind of what I kept reminding myself when going into a big event like this. Secondly, it was the first LAN event in a couple of years because of COVID. So I had to remind myself that, maybe other people are feeling this as well. And then you guys, of course, chat, Brandon and Richard were very, very helpful throughout both tournaments that I broadcasted. A lot of good advice, a lot of talking off ledges. But I think, just listening to the people around you, understanding, taking advice from the people that are experienced in that field, that, have that on-air experience and understand what it's like to be in front of the camera on a bigger scale. And then just kind of replicating that, but in your own kind of way, with your own kind of rhythm. I think it's important to have your own, personality on camera. And I think that's what I try to remember, taking that experience and bringing that with the addition of my little flair. But I think, the fundamentals are kind of the same. You're talking to a camera, and being confident in front of the camera translates to the audience. So
you're mentioning sort of the on-air broadcasting, and that's something, Brandon, that you've continued all throughout sort of your 5-year journey that's still ongoing. But very early, you got into content creation. You started creating Twitter videos. You started doing YouTube videos, and now streaming sort of on Facebook. You've been streaming on Twitch. You've got what, as we said at the top, over nearly 500,000 followers across all platforms. I saw a question in the chat earlier that asked Cal about burnout and sort of the effects that overworking can have. I think it's a bit more apparent to yourself, because I know you personally, you're a workaholic. You will work and work and work. How has it been? Do you feel burnout? And for people at home, how can you get around it?
I think one thing that's difficult is that, all of us that are probably watching this now, and the people that are in this panel, we're all so passionate about what we do, right? So and there's so much enjoyment in what we do that sometimes it, naturally, I'm in Denmark commentating over a FIFA tournament. This isn't work, right? This is something that I really do enjoy and love. And again, when you start doing something you're really passionate about, naturally you are keen to overwork. As Cal said, he's putting in so many hours in the day. I mean, I think there's different ways to answer this question. I think one, make a schedule, obviously be clever with your time. 2, if you do get to a fortunate enough position, get people on board to help you with that. I'm in a very fortunate position where I can hire maybe an editor or a graphic or a social guy, compared to maybe, Leah could do that, but I believe Leah makes her own thumbnails because that's her own personal touch, and she likes to edit her videos too, because that's her, she wants to ensure the product going out there is that, and everyone's got their own way of doing it. For me, I don't always have that time. So I'm trying to, basically catch up on it. I believe I'm a little bit laggy. If I am, I do apologise. If you can hear me still, that's the main thing. Feel free to pass on to Leah.
No, absolutely. I think it is very important. Obviously, the power of the internet as well. Manchester, Canada, Denmark is where you're coming from for this webinar brought to you by ACC. I saw a question in the chat, Leah, talking about female streaming and women in esports in particular. What's it been like in general? Sort of, you said you were late stepping into sort of the late in your life. I say late. It's not like you're towards the end of your life, but in terms of content creation, you are sort of towards the more mature end. What's it been like? Do you think coming into it at a later time has helped you? If I'm talking to 18-year-old Leah Revelle, would she have struggled more potentially with how it's been, or what's it just been like in general as a woman in esports and gaming?
I think my age definitely helps. I think I'm closer to the age where I've stopped caring a lot about what other people think. And I think that's beneficial because obviously being a woman in FIFA specifically, but esports as well, has been, I'm not going to say it's easy because it's not. This is an industry of predominantly men. And I think that it's important going into it to remember that, a lot of this community is very young, very uneducated. And I think it's important to remember that you're just to kind of have thicker skin and let that stuff that you see or hear roll off your back. For the most part, though, I'm not going to say it's completely negative or even half of what half the comments or the support that I get is negative, because it's not. I would say like 95% of the community has been very welcoming and supportive and encouraging in all of not just myself, but other females in the FIFA community as well. But yeah, I think it's just let that stuff fuel you. You know, it's important, I think, for us or for me and the other women in FIFA or gaming in general, to push for that change and that, you know, adaptation. It's not, you know, it's 2022. There's a lot of women that don't stream but game at home, you know, just at leisurely, like as a hobby. So yeah, I think if I could give anyone advice, it would just, or even my younger self advice, it would be to don't let those comments get under your skin. You know, a lot of these people are looking for reactions, and oftentimes that's what they get. And so I think just let it fuel you. You know, let them show you that you can be just as good and maybe better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what you said there resonates with myself as well. When myself and Brandon, I think he's dropped off due to just connection issues. He's in a hotel on hotel Wi-Fi, so we'll let him off. When I first came into esports, I was very new, I was very young, and we commentated a tournament. I think there are 170,000 people watching this tournament, and I'd never really spoke it and seen that many people before. And look, a lot of the feedback that we got, it may be only 1%, but it's that 1% that you read was negative, was sort of was a little bit hurtful. And it took me probably about 2 to 3 years to learn to just let stuff bounce off. But it shouldn't be like that. There shouldn't be that negativity. You shouldn't have to deal with that. So I think being in a much positive place and doing it and coming together is really important. We see a lot of questions in the chat. Before I let you go, Leah, because I know that you've got places to be this evening. Full-time creator, Backpage Gaming, saying, how did you find the switch from part-time to full-time? Was there a number that you got to where you thought, yeah, I want to do this now and this is the time to go? Was it a particular sponsorship deal or something that gave you that sort of passing income month to month? What was it, the decision to potentially go into full-time?
So it actually wasn't something that I had intentionally planned per se. I knew that would be somewhere that I wanted to be, somewhere that I wanted to get eventually. Obviously, you know, as mentioned previously, there's some, you know, tough things about being a woman in FIFA, but there's some great things as well. And, you know, it's an industry that hasn't been tapped into, and I think that helped my channel grow very quickly. Anything new and different to something that is typically one way is going to, I guess, attract some more attention. I think you know, over the last, even in my first year, I feel like I did a pretty good job with, you know, bringing some entertainment value to my brand and building that brand over a year, getting partnered on Twitch. But yeah, in terms of transitioning from that part-time to full-time, I actually quit my job in December, had a new job lined up. I never had an intention of making that leap so early. But unfortunately, things had fallen through with the new company, and it was kind of like one of those like, aha, you know, maybe this is like the universe telling me to pursue this. Once I have more time to invest into content, maybe my content will be better, it'll reach a wider audience, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think that, you know, I'm very fortunate also to be in a position where I'm partnered with, you know, an esports team and an MLS team. And I think that those factors definitely help propel you. If I could give any advice to people that were hoping to go part-time to full-time creation, I think that you just have to kind of do what's best for you. You have to understand, you know, if your financials and if you're able to make ends meet behind the scenes. I think that something for me that stood out to me a lot was I never wanted my content. I wanted my content to remain genuine. I never wanted to be in a situation where it felt forced because I was stressed about like being able to pay bills, for example. And I think that's important to remember, because you want to have that like genuine kind of content, I guess, for lack of a better word, because that's what your audience sees. So anyway, without waffling too much, I think that it kind of fell into my hands, but it's been great.
Well, let's bring Brandon Smith back in. I think the connection and the laptop in Copenhagen has picked up. Brandon, just a couple of final questions for yourself. We mentioned this question earlier to Martin Wyatt about getting in behind the scenes. We mentioned it to Cal about potentially getting spotted by an esports organization. But for you as a very prominent, successful content creator, what tips, what advice would you give to students, to prospective students, to anybody really? I've got my pen and notepad out on getting into content creation, becoming sort of successful in that field and taking it to the next level.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had to go downstairs and get to turn the internet on again. I think we're back. Just on that, I'd say probably a few pointers. I'd say is number one, get to know the social platforms. For example, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch. They all work in so many different ways. So number one, I'd say is one, get posting on them, even if it's crap or even if it's just something. Get posting on these platforms, because a lot of stuff I post on social media is sometimes often crap. However, for every 5 crap things, one thing will hit and you'll be like, okay, that's an idea again I can do, or I can rework that again. Also, if you're looking to go into Apex, let's say, look at what Apex creators are currently doing on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Shorts, all that. Look at what they're doing at the moment and take inspiration. Don't copy them directly, but take inspiration and go, right, okay, that sort of video works quite well. How can I put my own spin on it? Such as trends on TikTok. People do the same dances, the same songs. These can work if you just alter them slightly. Also, you've got to think at the moment, everyone's watching short content. People's attention spans aren't very long. If you're going to get into content right now, I wouldn't suggest making a 25-minute video about, a map or getting into a game or a breakdown of an esports event. I'd look at short form content, especially across YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels. For me, those are 4 easy social media platforms and ways you can post content and you can grow quickly from them. So that's what I'd say is a now, and then a long term, just look to post as many platforms as you can and just look to learn from other creators, collaborate with other creators. But as I said, be inspired by what people are doing. Don't directly copy, but be inspired and twinge it in your own way.
And final question for myself to you two. What is sort of, when we talk about esports, when we talk about the future of esports, the future of gaming, I asked it to Martin earlier, where do you see it going? And but more importantly, where do you see yourselves going sort of over the next 3, 4, even 1 to 2 years? Because things happen so quickly. Leah, I'll come to you first. What's the future of Leah Revelle going to look like?
Well, as Richard alluded to, I am not getting any younger. So I don't know. I mean, I love streaming. I think streaming for me is easy. I can talk, as you guys have noticed. So I think that, I would like to be streaming in 5 years, 10 years time, but I don't know how realistic that looks for me and my life cycle, which is why I think getting into broadcasting and hosting is a great opportunity for me and my brand. I think that's more long-term and expands the longevity of my brand. And it's something I really enjoy. I think it's, still, like I said before, the same fundamentals. It's in the same realm as streaming, just kind of in a different capacity. So hopefully still creating content on Twitch and YouTube, and then hosting even would be really cool in the future. But yeah.
And Brandon, other than getting that YouTube plaque, what's the future looking like for Brandon Smith, B Smith Esports? Is there anything that you think, I want to do that? What's the next goal, shall we say, for yourself?
It's tough for me. I like doing a lot of different things. Obviously, FIFA's my game at the moment, and I'll be honest, there's not many other esports titles that are really sort of pulling me in at the moment that I'd love to go and do them. Maybe another title in the longevity. Rocket League's always been something that's interested me. In terms of maybe commentating, people always think that football's the goal. Maybe I'd like to dabble my feet into football in some capacity. But for me, if I can honestly live this lifestyle for the next 10 years, or at least for however long I can, whether that's commentating, content creating, streaming, for me, I'm already very lucky to be what I'm doing. So honestly, I'd love to just say, just keep riding this wave for the next 5 years or so. Is probably the goal, to be honest, mate.
Guys, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I'll speak to you very soon. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you soon. I'm sure all the people who's going to see this, from both yourself, Leah, Cal, Martin, and Brandon, are going to take a lot from this. So thank you very much for joining me. There we go. Lovely stuff. And that wraps us up, everybody at home, for this ACC esports webinar. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you can take something from this. It has been recorded, so any future or prospectors or current students who are going into year 2 will be able to use this as an asset, as a source to look at, to quote, and potentially use in assignments or whatever it may be. This is going to be there for you to use. Hopefully as well, this won't be the first, and this won't be the last, should I say. It's the first, but it definitely won't be the last of these webinars. If you want anybody, I can try and reach out to them. I can try and get them on. Let me know, let your tutors know, let anybody know within Access, and I'll try and put those connections in place for everybody. But for the final time, hopefully you follow the stream. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and we'll be back next Monday for a very special Valorant tournament. It's going to be taking place from 3 p.m. on Monday. If you want to watch that, make sure you follow, make sure you're up to date with notifications. And for this very special esports webinar hosted by myself, Richard Buckley, and ACC, we'll see you next time. Have a good night, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.